How much time should you spend talking in a coaching conversation? It's a great question and worthy of exploration. This is frequently on the minds of executive coaches as to whether they're spending too much time talking and not enough time listening in a coaching conversation. In normal conversations, we often find ourselves speaking just as much as the other party. So it's probably about a 50-50 ratio. But in a coaching conversation, it's an entirely different matter. We are not there to teach, to train, to mentor, but we're there to coach. And coaching is it's a modality that doesn't require a lot of speaking to be powerful and effective. In fact, the more we talk, the less effective we probably are as coaches, because we're not creating that coaching space where the client is given time to think, to speak, to feel, because they're spending too much time listening to us, and we do not want that to happen. So what is the right ratio? Well, there are multiple answers to that question, and so truly it depends. But a rule of thumb is to consider that it should be somewhere between 1/5 and 1/3 in terms of the amount of time that you're spending asking questions and sharing observations, reflecting back what you're hearing, and so forth. If you spend as little as 1/5 of the time, you're speaking just 20% of the time. How will you know if that's the level that you're speaking? You will know because the client seems to have talked almost the whole session. And that should feel good to you because you've learned a lot about the client, and hopefully the client has learned a lot about themselves. They've explored deeply the questions that you've posed to them, the solutions that they've come up with on their own, and the next actions they might take out of the conversation. In the book, Coaching Hacks, written by Jonathan Wright, this is exactly the ratio that he recommends, 80-20, where the client talks 80% of the time and the coach 20. In my training sessions, I've had coaches say that they talk even less than that. And that's amazing. If they can have a powerful conversation where they're talking even less than 20% of the time, hats off to the coach, because then the client is fully engaged in the session and really hearing themselves much more than they're hearing the coach. What's enabled by us asking great questions and allowing the coaching space to exist? The client gets to really think about what you're saying. They get to think about what they're feeling about what you're saying. They get to think in silence. All of this happens when we speak less. To speak less, we need to ask tighter, more powerful questions. We don't need to bring the context into the situation. We can just ask the question about the specific situation, what they think about it, what they're about to do about it, when they're going to take action around it, and so forth. So, for example, what's next? Can be a powerful question. 2 words. One of the exercises that I like to do in my coach training sessions is to have the coach use no more than 3 words in a coaching session. I learned about that exercise from 2 mentor coaches that I went through a training program with. And I thought it was a great exercise. And I've introduced that into my coach training. Can you imagine asking questions with just 3 words? What say you? What's next? How about that? And so, who could help? How will they? It requires more thought on your part and more effort, and it also requires that the client be fully engaged and be ready to do most of the talking, right? So that's an exercise. I'm not suggesting that you always ask questions that are that short, but it's a great way to challenge yourself. Another way to challenge yourself to grow in this area of spending less time talking and more time focused on the other person and listening is to journal after a coaching session. Write down the short and powerful questions that you recall asking. Write down the long questions from your recollection that probably could have been shortened. And what would you do now that you have some time to think about that question to shorten it? What questions come to mind that you could have asked that would have been short and powerful? Did you create enough silence in the coaching session? Silence is a powerful part of coaching, and if we spend too much time talking, the silence may be taken up. And that would be a shame because clients sometimes learn through thinking in that silent period. So here's your challenge. Going forward, try to economize and use fewer words in your coaching sessions and yet create more powerful coaching sessions for your client. Journal afterwards to note what were the questions that seemed to resonate best with the client, and were they short, or could they be even shorter and still remain powerful or even be more powerful? As you do this work, you will find that your coaching gains strength, you become more confident, and you'll spend more time focused on other aspects of the coaching session besides just doing the talking and asking great questions. If you have questions about this, feel free to post them in the comments below. If you have an experience that you'd like to share, would love to hear about it in the comments below. And of course, at any time, you can email me with your questions at michael@bayareaexecutivecoach.com.